Overview. There are many computer applications that you can use to drive a laser cutter. CorelDRAW is the most versatile, and mastery of it will allow you to achieve the outstanding results from your laser system. CorelDRAW is a very powerful professional vector graphics package usually sold with other Corel products such as CorelTrace and Corel Photo Paint. Some features will be familiar to those provided in similar applications such as Adobe Illustrator. CorelDRAW supports Windows shortcuts and is both configured with its own additional shortcuts and can be customized to have additional shortcuts added. It has a vast array of import and export filters to allow you to work successfully with the majority of other applications you will encounter. Another advantage to be gained from using CorelDRAW is that it can be used to great benefit for a multitude of other tasks teachers encounter in their day-to-day work. This manual, for example, has been produced in CorelDRAW. Learning how CorelDRAW treats the various objects you create and import is an essential element of your training. A glossary of CorelDRAW terminology is provided with this material, and you can find further explanations in the help screens. To begin this tutorial, let's take a look around the workspace. CorelDRAW has gone through many updates over the years, and earlier versions will have some of the features located in different places to those described in this manual. However, since version 9 most of these have been standardized. The workspace. If you are entirely new to CorelDRAW, or maybe you haven't had much opportunity to use it in the past, the first thing to do is to familiarize yourself with the workspace. At the top of the screen you will find the menu bar. The menus contain a wide variety of commands to modify the characteristics of your workspace and the entities within it. Beneath the menu bar you will find the property bar. This is adaptive, dependent on the object you select or the tool you are using, and you should note the various options you can control with each tool you use or shape you create. On the left-hand side of the screen is the toolbox you use to create shapes and text with. At the bottom of the screen is the status bar. This will tell you important details about the objects you select and is an invaluable guide to resolving problems. A number of dockers are available to allow you to manage your drawings and modify the components you create. A docker is a toolbar that can be opened and closed as you wish, and either kept floating or docked at the side of your workspace and collapsed to allow you greater screen space. I always have the following dockers open: Object Properties, Transformations, Shaping. I frequently open the Object Manager and undo docker for advanced control of my drawing. Menu bar, property bar, toolbox, color palettes, dockers, status bar, page, rulers. Configuring the workspace. Defining the page size. You can create your drawings in any page size you find convenient. However, it is very important that when you print your file to the laser cutter that the page you print from represents the bed size of your machine. If it doesn't, you will have no control over where the file is being cut. The page size can be set on the property bar. The rulers on your laser cutter have their origin at the top left-hand corner, and you will find it useful if your CorelDRAW page has the same. This can be defined by double-clicking on the rulers and entering the value you set the page height to in the vertical origin. Note it is easier to keep the units in inches when you do this. VL 216x12, VL 324x12, M 324x12, M 360 24x12, V 460 24x18, X 660 32x18. VLS 2.30 16x12, VLS 3.524x12, PLS 3.60 24x12, PLS 4.60 24x18, PLS 6.60 24x18. Nudge keys. The nudge keys allow you to make quick, precise incremental adjustments to the position of selected objects. Select objects and use the arrow keys on your keyboard to move them. A nudge is a movement by a defined amount. Double-clicking on the rulers opens the ruler options dialog where the nudge amount can be defined. I recommend a value of 1 mm is entered. You will also see options for super nudge and micro nudge. These will move a selection by a multiple of the nudge value you defined. I recommend for practical purposes you set the super nudge to 10 and the micro nudge to 2. A super nudge will then be 10 mm and a micro nudge will be 0.5 mm. Depending on the version of CorelDRAW you have, this can be set in the property bar when nothing is selected by entering a value in. Note that the super nudge and the micro nudge factors cannot be set in the property bar and will be whatever factor has been defined in the ruler options. To use super nudge, hold down the shift key as you press the arrow keys. To use micro nudge, hold down the control key as you press the arrow keys. As the bed of your universal laser cutter has been built to imperial measurements, you may find it simpler to set the units to inches first before entering the dimensions. These are the actual dimensions depending on the model you have. 1 mm. The toolbox. Take a tour of the toolbox. By default this resides on the left-hand side of the screen, but it can be moved anywhere else, sometimes inadvertently, particularly if you use a laptop computer with a touch mousepad. Select Tool, Shape / Knife Tool, Zoom Tool, Freehand Tool, Smart Drawing Tool, Rectangle Tool, Ellipse Tool, Polygon / Graph / Spiral Tool, Basic Shapes Tool, Text Tool, Blend / Contour Tool, Eyedropper Tool, Outline Tool, Fill Tool, Interactive Fill Tool. Note the small triangle in the corner of some tools. Clicking on this opens a flyout with other related tools. Drawing Basics. Drawing with CorelDRAW is best achieved by breaking the items you are creating down into a series of discrete components that are then sized using the transformation docker and shaped with the shape tool and the weld and trim tools in the shaping docker. There are 4 basic tools used to create shapes: freehand tool, rectangle tool, ellipse tool, polygon tool. Select any one of these tools and click and drag your mouse to draw. When using the freehand tool to draw a straight line, you need to click, then move the mouse without dragging, then click again. Holding down the Control key as you do this will constrain the line you draw to be horizontal, vertical, or at 15-degree snaps between. Holding down the Control key when drawing. The other shapes will constrain the shape to be regularly proportioned, i.e. rectangles becomes a squares, an ellipse becomes a circle, and a polygon has identical sides. Click and drag. Click, take finger off mouse button, move mouse, then click again. Holding down the Control key as you do this. Click and drag. Holding down the Control key. As you click and drag, the rectangle and polygon objects you draw can be modified in these ways. You can radius the corners of a rectangle and you can turn a polygon into a star shape. If you select the shape, you will see control points where the lines connect and at the midpoint of the polygon lines. Using the shape tool, click and drag these control points. Dockers. A docker is a type of dialog box that can reside on the screen to allow you quick access to commands, provide information about your work, to allow you to modify your work, to control your drawing in many ways. There are a number of dockers that you may choose to keep open at all times. They can be minimized to keep your workspace as large as possible but are readily accessible, and can be closed down if you don't use them very frequently. Dockers that are particularly useful and worth keeping open all the time are the Object Properties Docker, the Transformation Docker, the Shaping Docker, the Undo Docker, and the Object Manager Docker. Dockers are opened through the Window drop-down menu. Minimize expand by clicking here or on the tab for the docker you want to use. Dockers stack over each other as you open them. The Transformation Docker. The Transformation Docker enables us to modify the objects we create or import in a precision way. We can move objects to a precise location, rotate, mirror, size and skew accurately. Position, rotate, scale and mirror, size, skew, anchor point. The Shaping Docker. The Shaping Docker lets you achieve the following things: weld, trim and intersect. Late versions of CorelDRAW have added more functions to the Shaping Docker that advanced users may find useful, but of all the functions, weld and trim will be found to be powerful tools that are the most useful. In each function you are given the option to leave the original source object and / or target object. Checking these tick boxes when you use these functions will create duplicate objects. This is useful for advanced users with good planning skills and enables better productivity. It is advised that you leave these tick boxes unchecked until you are fluent with using the shaping tools. The source object is the object you originally select to weld or trim. The target object is the object you subsequently act upon. It is important to understand that using these tools will affect the properties of the objects you are working with. The source object will take on the properties of the target object. The best way to understand how these tools are used is by example. Weld. Draw a rectangle. Now draw a second rectangle that overlaps the first. Apply a color fill to the second rectangle. With the second rectangle selected, click Weld, and with the arrow cursor that appears, click on the first rectangle. You will find the two rectangles have combined into a single object without a fill. Try this again, this time selecting the first object and welding this to the second. You will achieve the same shape, but this time the new object has a fill. Trim. Draw two rectangles as before. Select one and trim this to the other. You will find that the target object has a piece missing where the source object overlapped. Using the shaping tools automatically converts objects to curves. The weld command. Try this again, this time selecting the first object and welding this to the second. You will achieve the same shape, but this time the new object has a fill. The weld command creates a single curve from two or more components. The components may overlap, sit next to each other or be some distance apart. You are given the option to leave the original source object and / or target object. Checking these tick boxes will create duplicate originals. This is useful for advanced users with good planning skills and enables better productivity. It is advised that you leave these tick boxes unchecked until you are fluent with using the shaping tools. The source object is the object you originally select to weld or trim. The target object is the object you subsequently act upon. It is important to understand that using these tools will affect the properties of the objects you are working with. The source object will take on the properties of the target object. The best way to understand how these tools are used is by example. Draw a rectangle. Now draw a second rectangle that overlaps the first. Apply a color fill to the second rectangle. With the second rectangle selected, click Weld and with the arrow cursor that appears click on the first rectangle. You will find the two rectangles have combined into a single object without a fill. The trim command. The trim command creates a single curve from two or more components. The components must overlap. Trim forms the shape of the selected object, source object, into the object you trim to where it overlaps. Target object. You are given the option to leave the original source object and / or target object. Checking these tick boxes will create duplicate originals. This is useful for advanced users with good planning skills and enables better productivity. It is advised that you leave these tick boxes unchecked until you are fluent with using the shaping tools. The source object is the object you originally select to weld or trim. The target object is the object you subsequently act upon. It is important to understand that using these tools will affect the properties of the objects you are working with. The source object will take on the properties of the target object. The best way to understand how these tools are used is by example. Draw a rectangle. Now draw a second rectangle that overlaps the first. With the second rectangle selected, click Trim, and with the arrow cursor that appears click on the first rectangle. The intersect command. Intersect creates the shape that is formed by the overlap of two components. You are given the option to leave the original source object and / or target object. Checking these tick boxes will create duplicate originals. Draw a rectangle. Now draw a second rectangle that overlaps the first. With the second rectangle selected, click Intersect with and with the arrow cursor that appears click on the first rectangle. Try intersecting circles with squares. In this example I have intersected one circle with another then intersected this with the third. The Object Manager Docker. Advanced CorelDRAW users make much use of the Object Manager Docker. Each item you have created can be identified, accessed and modified in the Object Manager. New layers can be created in your drawing in the Object Manager and it allows you to move objects between layers and pages. You can do this by dragging the item to another layer or page. Dragging objects within the layer they are on will change the order within the drawing. Each page you create within your drawing will appear in the Object Manager and selecting objects within these pages will automatically switch the view to the page they are on. You can give names to the layers and pages here too. Right-click on the layer or page and click on Rename. Layers allow you to manage your pages efficiently and productively. You can turn on viewing, printing and editing of individual layers. An example would be in the production of a printed carton. Images that are to be printed on the carton will be created on one layer. A second layer is used for the creation of the vector cutting and scoring part of the file. Turn off printing of the cutting layer when you are printing the images, reverse this when printing to the laser cutter. Master page. Each new file has one master page that contains and controls three default layers, the grid, guides, and desktop layers. The grid, guides, and desktop layers contain the grid, guidelines, and objects outside the borders of the drawing page. The desktop layer lets you create drawings you might want to use later. You can specify settings for the grid and guidelines on the master page. See the section on guidelines for further information. You can specify settings, for example color, for each layer on the master page. You can add one or more master layers to a master page. This layer contains information that you want to display on every page of a multi-page document. For example, you can use a master layer to place a header, footer, or static background on every page. The Undo Docker. The Undo Docker. This lists the sequence of events that you have made in your drawing and allows you to get back to a specific point without losing the work you have done. It is particularly useful for teachers as it will let you see how your students have constructed their drawings. You can use this to go back to a point in your drawing where you constructed an item and copy this item to the clipboard. Then go to the last event and paste the item from the clipboard into your drawing again. If you go back to a previous point and then change something, you will lose the other work you did from that point on. It is important to remember that the number of undo steps available has to be configured in the CorelDRAW setup. The default is around 20 steps, but you will find this limiting at times. If you have a reasonable amount of RAM on your computer, I would suggest you increase this to around 50 steps or more. Outlines and fills. When you create drawings to be cut or engraved on the laser, you have to ensure the following criteria are applied. Outlines need to have a line weight of hairline. They need to have a color that the laser driver recognizes as a command, i.e. the precise color as defined in your laser manual. Filled areas of your drawing can only be engraved. Outline fill. We can set the outline color by using the outline tool in the Object Properties Docker. We can set the fill color by seeing the fill tool in the Object Properties Docker. You will only be able to see and print a fill in a closed path, however the object will own fill properties if these were applied. Once the path is closed, the fill will be visible and can be printed. For information about closing paths, refer to the section on curve editing. Simply right-clicking on a color in the color palette. It can also be set. Simply left-clicking on a color in the color palette. It can also be set. You will have received a CorelDRAW color palette with your laser driver. The colors in this palette are the specific colors that the driver recognizes and which you can assign tasks for the laser to do. This palette needs to be copied to the CorelDRAW palettes folder and opened using Window, Color Palettes, Open Palette, then locating the palette from its location. In the Universal Laser Systems color palette there are 8 primary colors and 19 shades of gray. The gray colors will apply a percentage of the power you set the black color to corresponding to the percentage of gray you use, i.e. 50% gray applies 50% of the power you set for black. Black. Aligning objects. As you build your drawing, you will find it necessary to arrange components so that they align with other components. There is a variety of ways to do this, and CorelDRAW has some quick methods. Select the objects you wish to align, then go to the Arrange drop-down menu, Align and Distribute, then select the method of alignment you need. Note the shortcuts listed to the right of the options. L aligns the objects to the left of their bounding box, R aligns the objects to the right of their bounding box, T aligns the objects to the top of their bounding box, B aligns the objects to the bottom of their bounding box, E aligns the objects to their centers vertically, C aligns the objects to their centers horizontally, P aligns the objects to the center of the page. Remembering these shortcuts will speed up the production of your drawing. Just select the objects and press the keyboard character corresponding to the alignment mode. A few things to note: all the components you select will be aligned in the same way, and this may not be quite what you intended. Imagine the example below for a simple keyring. The keyring shape has been drawn, a hole for the ring has been drawn, and you are ready to place the text to be engraved. Solar Laser Systems 01634290260 www.solarlasers.co.uk. Solar Laser Systems 01634290260 www.solarlasers.co.uk. Them centrally will place the keyring hole in the center too. To avoid this happening, first group the keyring shape and the hole, then align the text on the keyring. Format text before you align it, as formatting after will lose the alignment. Oops. About curves. A curve is a series of line segments, each line segment have a node at each end. Line segments can be straight or curved, and they need not be connected to each other within a single curve. Curve objects can be modified in different ways to the other objects you create. Each simple shape you draw using the tools in the toolbox can be modified in its own particular way. Rectangles can have their corners radiused, ellipses can be converted to arcs or pies, polygons to stars, etc., and text can be edited. Converting any of these to curves loses that ability but gives you the ability to infinitely modify the shape of the object. Certain commands automatically convert objects to curves. An example is when using the shaping Docker tools. Converting to curves is a one-way street, so make sure your object is exactly as you want it to be before you do this. You will not be able to correct a spelling mistake once you convert text to curves, and the process of changing the radius on a rectangle is much more complicated. One of the great assets CorelDRAW has is the powerful curve editing capability. This is provided by the Shape tool in the toolbox, not to be confused with the shaping Docker tools. See the section on curve editing for more information. Shape tool. Node. Curve editing. We have almost infinite ability to change the shape of the curves we create. The position and type of nodes can be controlled, whether the line relating to the node is straight or curved, whether adjoining nodes are connected, whether nodes exist at all. Node editing is achieved with the Shape tool in the Toolbox. You can use this to select the curve you are editing, pick up individual nodes and move them around, drag the line segment to change its form, move the node control points to alter the form of line segments, add and remove nodes. There are 4 node types: cusp, smooth, symmetrical, or line. Nodes can be changed from one type to another. Cusp nodes make the node's intersecting line take on the shape of a corner or point when you adjust the position of the node's control points. Smooth nodes make the node's intersecting line take on the shape of a curve. Each control point can be shortened or lengthened independently, giving you smaller or larger angles to work with. Symmetrical nodes make the node's intersecting line take on the shape of a curve as well as intersect the node at exactly the same angle. Line nodes let you shape objects by changing the shape of their segments. You can make a curve segment straight or a straight segment curved. The more nodes there are in a curve, the greater degree of control is possible with its shape. However, beware of adding too many, as this will increase the work your laser has to do and may slow down its operation. Nodes can be added by clicking on the point of the curve you wish to add the node, then clicking on the plus icon on the property bar. They can be removed by selecting them and pressing delete, clicking on the icon on the property bar, or by double-clicking on the node. Selecting a node and clicking on the break curve icon separates adjoining nodes. You can also use the Shape tool to click on a line segment, then click on the break curve icon to break the curve at that point. If the path has 2 separations, it is possible to break the curve apart using the Break Curve Apart command in the Arrange drop-down menu. This will produce 2 separate curves. Selecting 2 adjoining nodes and clicking on the Join 2 Nodes icon connects them. You do not have the ability to define an absolute position for nodes directly, but you can get them to snap to guidelines or to a grid to achieve this. You can also get their control points to snap to guidelines. ADDNODED ELIT NODEJOIN TWONODES BRE AKC ERV CONVERTC ERV to LIN ECONVERT LIN E to C ERV MAKENODEACUSP MAKENODESMO auth MAKENODESY metric al. Combining and breaking apart. Terminology that applications use can sometimes be confusing and misleading, especially when it is in conflict with our usual appreciation of the same terminology. In the case of CorelDRAW, a curve, for example, may consist of only straight lines. It may also be comprised of several seemingly separate entities. This can often be a difficult concept to grasp because the tendency is to think of these entities as a group. Individual components can be combined into a single curve. This provides very useful properties regarding fills and editing capability. The process of separating them is called breaking apart. A number of commands we apply to our work automatically combine curves, and it may be necessary to break these curves apart before we can continue editing them. A simple way of understanding this is to think of text characters. The letter A, for example, comprises an outline shape with a triangle inside. The fill surrounds the triangle, but the triangle itself is not filled. Try the following. Draw the letter A using the text tool. It may help if you enlarge it to a size you can see clearly. Convert this to curves. Arrange Convert to Curves. With the object selected, look at the status bar at the bottom of the screen. It will tell you it is a curve. Now break the curve apart, arrange Break Curve Apart, and notice what happens to the fill and what the status bar tells you. We now have 2 objects. Because the triangle is a curve in its own right, now it has its own fill. Now combine them again, arrange Combine, and you will see the letter A as before. The ability to control fills in this way has a huge impact on the creativity that is possible when you are producing artwork for engraving. A. Converted to curves. Broken apart, the individual pieces can be moved. Objects can be combined to create a curve object that has particular properties. A fill only fills the gap between the inner and outer parts of the curve. Although the curve is made from 2 or more components, it is treated as a single curve. An example is shown below. This curve was created by drawing the heart shape and placing a duplicate smaller heart inside. The 2 objects are selected together and combined into a single curve using the Combine command in the Arrange drop-down menu. The curve can then be filled. The shortcut for Combine is Ctrl+L. Text can be broken apart too. The process works as follows. Paragraphs are broken into sentences. Sentences then have to be broken apart into words. Words can be broken apart into individual characters. The text is still editable as text, but it's no longer linked to the text it was previously part of. Characters that are converted into curves can be broken apart into the individual curves that form them. For example, the letter B is formed from 3 components. TIP files containing text objects can only be opened on other computers having the font that is used installed. Converting text to curves means that the text is now a graphical object that can be opened on computers that do not have the same font installed. Obviously, once text is converted to curves, it cannot be edited as normal. This is one curve. It was created by taking the heart shape and duplicating 2 smaller heart shapes inside. The 3 shapes were then combined so that when filled there is an open area between the filled areas of the curve. The open area can be seen in the illustration below. Combining and breaking apart part 2. Convert outline to object. The convert outline to object command can be used to produce solid objects from open curves. In this example I have drawn a spiral. Set the line weight to a given thickness. Now set the convert outline to object command, arrange, convert outline to object. Give the object an outline and remove the fill. Note, when you convert an outline to an object you still retain the original line. This line is invisible but can be located in the object manager and deleted if necessary. An example of a complete project created using this technique is shown later. Using guidelines. Guidelines can be extremely useful tools in the drawing creation process, and CorelDRAW gives many options for their use. Simple guidelines can be produced by clicking and dragging the rulers. They can also be produced by entering the guideline setup. View guideline setup. The left-hand ruler produces a vertical guideline, the top ruler produces a horizontal guideline. You can drag them to the rough location you require and you can set them to a precise location on the workspace. You can rotate the guidelines, either roughly or to a precise angle. You can create guides from shapes you draw and you can snap to the guidelines. When you create a guideline it will appear as a red dotted line. The property bar will show its position. Entering a value in the object's position will move the guideline to the location you require. When you deselect the guideline it will appear as a faint gray dotted line. Rotating guideline. Selecting the guideline and clicking on it again will open the rotation handles, enabling the guideline to be rotated at will. If you want to set this to a precise angle, this can be set in the angle of rotation on the property bar, and the center of rotation can also be set. Snapping to guidelines. Snapping to guidelines can be turned on or off in the property bar when no object is selected, or go to view snap to guidelines if you have objects selected. Objects can be snapped to guides at their bounding box or center. The edge of the object will appear as a blue dotted line when it is snapping. Creating guide objects. Guideline reside in the guides layer on the master page in the Object Manager Docker. If you make this layer active, anything you draw will be treated as a guide object. Such objects will not have fill properties and will appear as a faint gray outline. You can drag objects from other layers into the guides layer. You can of course copy objects and then paste them into the guides layer when this is active. Rotation handles. Center of rotation. Dynamic guidelines. Dynamic guides were introduced in CorelDRAW 12 and can revolutionize the way you work. You will need to turn them on either in View, Dynamic Guidelines, by using the icon in the property bar, or by Alt+Shift+D. They can be somewhat unnerving until you get used to them, as they flash up as blue lines when you create or move objects relative to other objects. It is well worth persevering because they will improve your productivity once you have mastered them. As you drag an object, the dynamic guidelines will tell you if you are moving it orthogonally or at a preset angle and how far you are moving it. They will tell you the specific place you are grabbing the object. They will automatically snap to other objects and tell you the specific place you are snapping to. You can set the dynamic guideline options in View Dynamic Guideline Setup. Shortcuts. Many of you will be familiar with Windows shortcut keys. CorelDRAW supports all the usual shortcuts and has a number of its own to speed up production. You can also assign your own shortcuts to suit your particular working methods. The common shortcuts you are likely to find useful with producing drawings for your laser cutter are listed below. As you become familiar with the program, you are likely to use it for other purposes. A comprehensive list of CorelDRAW shortcuts can be found in Tools Customization Commands Shortcut Keys. View All. You can save these to a comma-separated text file or print them out. Ctrl plus Z undo, Shift plus Ctrl plus Z redo, Ctrl plus C copy, Ctrl plus V paste, Ctrl plus X cut, Ctrl plus G group, Ctrl plus U ungroup, Shift plus PGD end to back, Shift plus PG up to front, B align bottom, E horizontally align center, C vertically align center, L aligns left, R aligns right, P aligns to center of page, Ctrl plus L combine, Ctrl plus K break apart, move selection up by defined nudge, move selection down by defined nudge, move selection left by defined nudge, move selection right by defined nudge, Shift plus move selection up by super nudge factor, Shift plus move selection down by super nudge factor, Shift plus move selection left by super nudge factor, Shift plus move selection right by super nudge factor, Control plus move selection up by micro nudge factor, Control plus move selection down by micro nudge factor, Control plus move selection left by micro nudge factor, Control plus move selection right by micro nudge factor. Box project 1. So let's apply the techniques we've covered so far and use them to create a jointed box. Step 1, draw a rectangle. Step 2, size the rectangle to 10 mm long by 3 mm tall. Step 3, select the rectangle and using the relative positioning tool enter 20 mm and click apply to duplicate 3 times. Step 4, uncheck the relative tick box and click the bottom center radio button. Select the 5 rectangles and enter a value of H 0.0 and V 0.0 and click apply. Box project 2. Step 4, draw another rectangle and set the size to be 70 mm x 64 mm. Step 5, set the anchor point in the position tool to be the top center. Enter a value of H 0.0 and V 0.0 and click apply. Box project 3. Step 6, select the 4 small rectangles and copy to the clipboard, Ctrl+C, or edit, copy in the shaping docker, click weld and touch the arrow cursor on the large rectangle. Step 7, using the rotate tool, enter a value of 180 degrees and click apply. Now position the top center of the object to H 0.0 and V 0.0. Step 8, paste the 4 rectangles held on the clipboard and weld these to your object. Step 9, using the rotate tool, enter a value of 90 degrees and click apply. Position the top center to H 0.0 V 0.0 and click apply. Draw a rectangle and set the size to H 40 mm and V 3 mm. Position the top center to H 0.0 V 0.0 and click apply. Step 10, copy this to the clipboard then trim it to the other object. Box project 4. Box project 5. Step 11, rotate the object 180 degrees, paste the rectangle from the clipboard and trim this to the other object. We have now completed one side. The opposite side will be identical. Move the object away from the 0 point, ready for the next part. Box project 6. Step 12, create 4 rectangles as we did in steps 1 to 4 and position them so that the top center is at H 0.00 V 0.00. Create a rectangle and set the size to be 70 x 70 mm. Position this rectangle so that the top center is at H 0.00 V 0.00. Step 13, select the 4 smaller rectangles and copy these to the clipboard, trim these to the larger rectangle. Box project 7. Step 14, rotate the object 180 degrees, copy the rectangles from the clipboard and trim these to the other object. Step 15, rotate the object 90 degrees. Create a rectangle and set the size to be 40 mm x 3 mm. Position this rectangle so that the top center is at H 0.00 V 0.00. Box project 8. We now have a joint for the base. Step 16, rotate the object 180 degrees. Paste the rectangle from the clipboard and trim this to the other object. We now have a side that will joint into the first side we made. Again, the opposite side will be identical. Move this piece out of the way, ready for the top and bottom pieces. Box project 9. Step 17, create a rectangle that is 40 mm x 70 mm. Position this so that the center is at H 0.00 V 0.00. Rotate 90 degrees, this time clicking apply to duplicate. Step 18, weld the second rectangle to the first. Box project 10. Step 19, create a rectangle that is 64 mm x 64 mm. Position this so that the center is at H 0.00 V 0.00. Step 20, weld the rectangle to the other object. We have now completed the top piece. Box project 11. Step 21, all that remains now is to position the 3 pieces we have drawn so that they are aligned with each other and duplicate them. Position the parts within your graphic where you wish them to be cut and save your graphic. Creating clock face numerals. Using the text tool, C, and with the font center justified type 12. Position the text at H, 0.00 and V, 100.00. In the rotate tool enter a value of 30 degrees, set the center of rotation to be H, 0.00 and V, 0.00, then click apply to duplicate 11 times. Who's your font? Now select each number in turn and in the text drop-down menu choose edit text and modify the text to be the number required for its position on the clock face. The numbers can be rotated relative to the position each has by checking relative center in the rotate tool, set the anchor point to be in the center and with the angle set at 30 degrees click apply a number of times until the number is viewed correctly. Select all the numbers and group them. The group command is in the arrange drop-down menu but you can also use Ctrl+G as a shortcut. The clock face numerals can now be using text creatively. CorelDRAW refers to two different text modes, artistic text and paragraph text. They are used for different purposes. Artistic text can be used for small amounts of text and is generally simple to manage. It can be used to follow a path around a shape, or be manipulated using the extrude tool, etc. Paragraph text is used for large bodies of text and is used creatively to have the text flow around or inside objects. It can be linked to other text boxes that work interactively with each other. Laid mice pft lan oassnedb. Meehnt. To all the girls I loved before, that wandered in and out my door, I'm glad they came along, I dedicate this song to all the girls I love. Getting text to flow around shapes is achieved by setting the text wrapping properties of the objects the text has to flow around. To get text to follow a path you can simply type the text then select it and click on Fit Text to Path in the text drop-down menu. Text can be fitted within an object in the following manner. Draw the frame for the text then unig the text tool hover over the edge of the frame. You will see the cursor change to this or this. A. This cursor is used to fit the text within a frame. When you get this cursor click and start typing. This cursor will automatically fit text to a path around the object. It is not necessary to use the Fit Text to Path command if you use this option just click and start typing when you get this cursor. To link text from various text boxes, click on the square at the top of the text box. Now click on the text box this needs to be linked to. If the at the bottom of a text box contains a black inverted arrow like this, it is telling you there is an overflow of text in this text box. You will either need to make the text box larger or link the text box to another that can take the overflow. Select the text then. Importing into CorelDRAW. CorelDRAW supports the import and export of many different file types. Files can be imported using the import command in the file drop-down menu or by clicking on the import icon on the standard toolbar. You can also drag files from Windows Explorer into CorelDRAW to import them, or you can copy objects from other applications and paste them into CorelDRAW. Import-export. Graphics that have been imported into CorelDRAW will be grouped, so if you intend to modify them you will need to ungroup them first. Although CorelDRAW does its best to keep up with the files other applications produce, these are constantly being revised. Corel's import filter is usually 1 or 2 versions behind the files other applications produce. If you experience difficulty with importing, try saving the file as an earlier version. Graphics from other applications will be imported as curves, however they may not always have their nodes joined, it depends how the application that created the graphic works. Generally, polyline objects have connected nodes. If the nodes are not joined you will not be able to apply a fill to the object. The most common export option for graphics packages is DXF format. It is also the most tedious and unreliable to work with. When you import a DXF file into CorelDRAW you are given the option to select the units, either inches or metric, you wish the file to be imported with. In some instances you will need to ensure the application that the file was exported from was set to the units you will be importing as well. DXF files sometimes have components rearranged when they are imported. This usually occurs when the files are particularly large. You should check the file looks like it did before it was imported before proceeding. Sometimes DXF files have additional lines and nodes. CorelDRAW gives you the option of automatically reducing nodes when you import to reduce this. Some applications treat circles as a series of straight lines rather than a circle. The number of lines that comprise the circle are a function of the application that created it. In some instances this can be set up in the application but regrettably not always. Tracing basics 1 of 3. Step 1 Lighten your image, using the arrow, pick tool. Then click on Effects, adjust brightness/contrast/ and set the settings to brightness, 30 contrast, -40 intensity, 0, then press OK. Step 2, click on the small arrow to get the menu to fly out, then click on the polyline tool. Note, to zoom in and out simply roll the mouse wheel. Step 3, using the polyline tool roughly trace the shape from your image, then double click when you reach the end, this closes the line. Note, if you don't, the line will keep on going. Watch the detailed tutorials to learn more at http://www.lanfrancdt.co.uk/software/CorelDRAW tracing.htm. Tracing Basics 2 of 3. Step 4, now we need to increase the line thickness and color so we can see it. Using the arrow, pick tool, click on your line. Next, double click in the corner of your screen on the outline color, the rectangle next to the small pen. Set your color to red and your line width to something thicker, then press OK. Step 6, now click on the shape tool and draw a box around the whole of your shape. This will let you curve, smooth and cusp all nodes on the line instead of one by one. Step 7, now you will see options at the top of the screen. Click on 1. Convert line to curve, then 2. Make node smooth, then 3. Make node a cusp. You will now be able to easily curve the lines. Watch the detailed tutorials to learn more at http://www.lanfrancdt.co.uk/software/CorelDRAW tracing.htm. 132. Tracing Basics 3 of 3. Step 8, now select the arrow and click away from the shape to unselect it. Next, select the pick tool and click on your shape, then click on a node on your shape. You will now see 2 handles appear from your node. Step 9, now drag the node's handles to create any curve you wish. Now shape your line to fit the image you're tracing. Now trace your whole image. Want to know more about CorelDRAW? On the same page as the tutorial is a Corel manual. It is the last link on the page. Or use the direct link below. http://www.lanfrancdt.co.uk/website/printable.dfs/how to use CorelDRAW.pdf. The manual tells you much more about Corel and the many things it can do. Have fun with CorelDRAW and get learning. Watch the detailed tutorial http://www.lanfrancdt.co.uk/software/CorelDRAW tracing.htm. Rendering 1 of 2. Using the arrow, click on the part of the drawing you wish to render. Then click on the color you wish it to be from the color panel on the right. Step 2, next click on the fill tool, then click on the fountain fill tool. The fountain fill window will then open. Step 3, now click on the custom button and a custom color bar will appear. Now click on an arrow, then pick a color and the bar will change. Double click anywhere on the bar to add a new color. You can also drag an arrow, this helps you blend the color. Note, you can choose a radial blend or a linear blend under type at the top. Learn more about CorelDRAW here, http://www.lanfrancdt.co.uk/software/CorelDRAW.htm. Rendering 2 of 2. Step 4, here you can see I have added several blends to make up my render. Once done, press the OK button to apply it to your drawing. Step 5, right click on your rendered shape, then select Styles and choose the Save Style Properties option and enter a name for your style. I called mine Blue 1. Now right click on an unrendered shape and choose Styles, then choose Apply and pick the style's name you just saved. This will add the same style to the other shape. Step 6, now create more styles and add them to your shapes. Also try the other render options from the Fill tool menu, try pattern and the texture options. Learn more about CorelDRAW here, http://www.lanfrancdt.co.uk/software/CorelDRAW.htm.